Hi, hello, and welcome to another edition of nicheBrains Expert Review of the Week. I'm John Vincent, co-founder of nicheBrains and the host for this session. Just a quick brief about nicheBrains. nicheBrains is a digital transformation platform which connects millions of SMEs with the best of brains across the globe to adopt digital transformation to help them grow their business exponentially, thus democratizing our digital transformation. In today's session, we have Mr. Sudhir Gupta, a business strategy execution specialist and also an expert on the nicheBrains platform. He's the founder of Maverin Consulting, an organization with over 3 decades of experience with expertise in business strategy, execution, people development, and launching of organizations in new regions. So welcome to the session, Mr. Sudhir.
Hi, John. Thank you very much.
Just a quick brief on. Great to have you, Mr. Sudhir. So just a quick brief on Sudhir. Sudhir has over 3 decades of experience in the IT and telecom industry with companies like Ascom India, Reliance Group, Informatic Computer Systems in roles of business head, consultancy, sales, distribution, profit center management, and human resources. His main area of focus has been in the corporate large-scale tenders from both private and government telecom operators, providing complete solutions to customers. He has won numerous large contracts in both private and government sectors, including India's largest financial connectivity project from the Reserve Bank of India. He has also coached and mentored, quite a lot, in fact, hundreds of employees as well across his career span. So before I go more, let's hear it from Mr. Sudhir himself. So Sudhir, if you can give us a quick background about yourself, your journey from corporate life, in terms of the positions you held, you have worked on, the domains, the regions you've handled. So to finally how you became an independent consultant and started your own consulting firm. So it will be great to hear from you, Mr. Sudhir.
Thank you, John, once again for the lovely introduction. Well, my journey, I would try to keep it as brief because it has been 3 decades and more. I started off as a computer programming, individual where we started the computer training. Way back in 80s, to use a computer, one had to learn how to program it. It was not as easy as what we see it today. So that was my first phase. I did a lot of training. I had the privilege of training the first batch of IFS officers who were basically ambassadors from various countries, Indian ambassadors who came down to the academy to get to learn how to use computers. So that's one of my early age, pride I take. That at the age of 23, I was training ambassadors, Indian ambassadors, global ambassadors. Through the journey, I have essentially been in IT and telecom. The first half was essentially IT. So from computer training, I moved into the hardware side of it, networking. I worked with an organization called Microland, which were possibly the pioneers of introducing Ethernet networking, or rather even networking per se. It started with the coaxial LAN, and then it moved to Ethernet. From there, in my journey, I moved a couple of organizations later to a Swiss organization where I was working as a country manager. And this organization, we were into telecom hardware. And these telecom hardware were essentially the network telecom. So back-end network telecom. And I worked there as a country head for about 6 years, and then moved into the Reliance Group, and that was my largest or the longest tenure. I spent nearly 15 years in the group between both the brothers. Started with Mukesh Ambani, moved to Anil Ambani, and there again it was essentially a business. I was heading business, regional business. But my last 4 years stint was shockingly, I moved there, but I enjoyed the most when I took over the global HR responsibility for the global business in the group. So that gave me a huge perspective of how, because I knew what HR or what business wanted from HR, because I was always from HR. And having come to HR, I had the ability to try and fulfill, or fill up the gaps which were there, or modify the process and policies to make, the entire approach more business oriented.
Right.
So that was my corporate life, which was nearly about 30, 31 years. And then about 4 years ago, I came out of the corporate world. And this was, of course, kickstarted by a personal near-death experience, which said, you got to move out. If you got to do something in future, do it now.
Right.
And I had anyways planned to become an entrepreneur or an individual contributor, in the world of consulting and advising. So I took a stand and I came out and I started my journey. The last 4 years, I've essentially been involved in a couple of kinds of activity. One is that I work with CEOs and MDs or the top management and help them, you know, with, or rather, I would make it like this: that if they had five, critical tasks they do, and couple of them, two of them are highly time consuming, I would go and tell them that give me those two, tasks, and I will deliver it on your behalf. So as
Got
a
it.
result, you get more time, you know, for the other three to be handled, and I deliver as you wanted it to be delivered. That was one way. The other, what I got into was to work on creating strategies for, the growth and, development of the organization. But I did not, stop there, and that I would cover more when we talk about, the consulting journey part. So my mindset was very clear that I don't want to be a traditional consultant, because
Right.
I want to be someone who is involved in the execution, because that's where
Right.
it means I would love to see that what I say, delivers the right kind of result. So I got
Absolutely.
involved in that way. So that is what I am doing. And the third thing which I am doing, which unfortunately due to the COVID is in kind of a slow mode right now, is help multinationals come what wanting to come into India and launch their business and services. So I
Oh,
work with them to launch them in India.
excellent. Excellent.
That's my journey in short.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Sudhir, for sharing about yourself here. Sudhir, I'm sure you've got in your journey you would have done quite a lot of new initiatives, transformations as well. Can you share any specific customer experience in digital transformation in detail? The challenges you faced, the value you had created for the customer.
Uh, okay, so here it will be a little different. It was not external customer, because this is my experience during my Reliance days. You see, Reliance itself is a huge organization. And if you see, the internal customer itself is too big. And this is where in the digital transformation, where I actually want to share is that when we began, policies and processes and stuff like that, they were all in some huge, thick, files and folders, which used to be stocked up in a data room that, we used to keep under lock and key. Anyone wanting to access, you had to go through those heavy files. And that used to be, any thought of it, used to bring up a huge, nightmarish feeling that, oh God, I have to go look at, something in one of those, 5,000 pages or, crazy volumes of files. So that used to be a big, big, deterrent. But uh, the corporate guideline was you cannot do anything without referring to those process and policies,
Absolutely. Right.
especially when it was interacting with, customers, going for large tenders or whatever, signing an agreement. So this is where, I saw that we went through a huge digital transformation. And this was way back in 2004.
Oh,
The
that's long.
entire data. And this is where, I always say, there are a lot of, means this is not a place to talk about organizations per se, but I would say Reliance internally is very different from the image and impression which is external. extremely futuristic. So 2004, everything that we did got digitized. Right from all these volumes of books, you know, to your attendance, your salary, anything, leave management, all got digitized, and we got one intranet portal. And that portal was it was known as the knowledge portal, but the actual name was Gyan Mandir, you know. So you log into Gyan Mandir and you get everything. Depending on your level, you would have the access. But everything that Reliance Group had to do was available in that Gyan Mandir. And we were also allowed to access remotely through our VPN, private VPN, you log in. So access, reference became such a, bliss. And we would at drop of a hat, just go and access and say, okay, let's look for this, get it. So this is what I'm saying is that though my personal experience during my corporate life was I never dealt with any customer in the transition because we were more of the back-end network service providers. But I saw it and I experienced it myself in my own organization. And I can imagine that same benefit would be for any customer or any organization who went through or did this kind of a digital, transformation. Communication became so easy. Even suggestions, making notes, telling people that this policy is probably a little dated now. Now, depending on the new situation, change it. And earlier with the print mode, the biggest thing was every change, what do you do? You know, are you going to print those thousands and thousands of files all over again? So that itself used to be a deterrent to any change.
Right.
No. You can send a circular or a mail, and a circular or a mail never gets captured. It gets lost. So digitization in that way, that experience as an employee, as an user, and also as a part of the team which was, involved in the digitization, I saw that this was absolutely mind blowing, and it brought in such. Of course, it was very painful. Biggest pain was, the data storing, the capacity. Where would be the data? Okay, we had our own data centers, so getting access to space was not a problem. But how do you create security? How do you do, that they are all available across employees, not only within India, because we had global, offices as well. And we also had to take care of level-wise access. What a frontline could access, obviously, did not have an access to the top management information. So every access to be defined as per your employee code and designation. So all that was quite a nightmare. Sometimes you found that the CEO is not getting the access, whereas the mid-management is getting the access. So these were, all the issues that we went through. But I think it took more than 6 to 9 months to get the entire thing digitized. And thereafter, modifying and, appending was much easier. But once it was done, one clearly understood that digital data is the way forward. And that is something which within Reliance, we understood in 2004. But maybe the world really moved on to it 10 years later.
Great. Yeah, I think you made the point there, Sundar. We think about that probably from outward when we look at Reliance, probably is probably an Indian entity. They probably are on the slower side, but the insights you have given in terms of how early itself, say way back in 2004 itself, they had the thought of digitalization and bringing everything in from the leave management to salary processing to probably all the tender documents, everything. Because I think you had you access to things immediately. I think that's the core there, right? So instead of going through people, you just go in there. You whatever you need is right out there. So it was very key that you made that digitization correct. And if you're even taken about a year, it doesn't matter. But at the end, you got the process rolling, and today I think most of the stuffs must be online for them as well. And to talk about in terms of the savings, huge cost savings they would have done from the paperwork and all of that printing, reprinting. There's plenty of benefits and advantages that you've really highlighted here. So I think it makes a very key valid.
Just the security and safety of the documents kept.
Absolutely right. If that's one thing, if that's handled and the access privileges are made in right frame, then the people get the right access, and whoever is in the chain, from the management to the lowest level, they get the right access to whatever they are privileged to see. So it makes, if that point is set, I think the whole process of digitization makes a seriously valid point which you have referred to. Yeah. Sudhir, just moving on. I do understand, you work with large corporate as well. But what do you think is the impact of digital transformation in your industry? If let's say probably in the telecom or even in the manufacturing industry, and let's say in the domains of business strategy or consulting or sales and distribution in the coming years. So how do you see that?
Now, if you simply ask what is the future, I think future is digital, and COVID made it even more.
Right.
There are a lot of things which people, even 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, never thought that they would do online or make it digital. They were forced to do it. Like today, a simple work from home was such a no in corporate policies that you can't, no. Even if you are, if you have a broken leg, please come to office on crutches, but be physically present, So digital is the way of life. So the sooner, people understand. But having said that, it's not that easy, because there are some, and if I look at, of course, segment-wise in the organization size, large organization, digitization may not be that much of a challenge because of what we are talking about. There are basically 4 key areas which drive digitization or the transformation, what you need. So one is technology, second is data, third is your process, and the fourth is the organizational capability for change.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a key point.
Yeah. So technology-wise, large organizations, they are more or less up to date with technology. Whatever the new technologies are coming, they would adopt and adapt and procure and implement. But when it comes to the next size, the SMEs, and I don't blame them, they try to maximize with the current technology that they have. They don't want to invest unnecessarily in technology, in especially IT, digital technology, as they would rather use that fund for some other direct business impact. They would rather do it in maybe plant and machinery or something else, which gives them direct return. So they are always maybe, or most of them are one step behind the latest technology. Data capturing, again, that is not really, or has not been a standard procedure for everybody, that any data and wherever data is available, just capture it. And then we will see how to utilize it. So data capturing is never or has never been a priority all the time. Till of late, when people realize, due to all kinds of calls that you keep getting, marketing, sales calls, that you go to one website and next minute, a call from that organization comes to you without even having done anything. So people have realized that data is being captured and used in such a way. But that data capturing, again, larger organization, maybe, but the mid-size, small size, they hardly ever, thought of capturing data. Process, again, the third point which I mentioned, large organization will still have some very defined process, mid-size, mostly unstructured, and sometimes pretty ad hoc. Because mid-size are more top-driven organization, where the owner or the senior managers, they just decide, they suddenly come and say, oh, from tomorrow or from today, office will carry on till 6 o'clock, and that's it. There is no discussion, no nothing. And they are seldom captured so that it can be referred later on. You've done something sometime, the process doesn't get captured. So repeat of the same task again gets a challenge. It becomes challenging that because you don't have any record of what was the process followed.
Yeah.
And then comes the ability I told you about, the organizational ability to change.
Right.
If, especially in SME, large again. When I say family run, I will not, but just not to point fingers, but organizations which are as big as, the Tatas and the Birlas and Reliance and so on, they have a tradition which is part of the organization, and for them to drastically change becomes quite a challenge. Same thing happens with the SMEs, which are owner driven and proprietor driven. It is more like whatever the culture of the proprietor is, who has been a traditional businessman. And for suddenly to tell them, no, 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 no more, the book, the red book of account, the traditional red book of account is no more valid. You need to digitize it. You got to put everything in computer. So there becomes a huge cultural shock there.
Right.
Computer, God knows someone can hack and date my data, but this red book, I keep it under my bed. Nobody gets it. So these
Right.
kind of cultural changes, so are challenges. So if you see for transformation, as I mentioned, you need to have the access to the latest technology,
Right.
especially the IT world or whatever technology that you're using.
Right.
Data you should have captured every possible data, whether you
Right.
have used it or not, and in the smallest form. Again,
Yeah.
data capturing is very, when you say address. Now, if you in one field, if you put the full address, right from your flat number to your building, apartment,
Yeah.
city, town, everything, that data is no use. So you will find that naturally all of us who fill so many online data form, all of them are broken. Flat number is separate, city is separate, the locality is separate, pin codes are there. So the more you break it down, the more useful it becomes. So data capturing, then process. For everything you define a process. So that one, you have a tested process, and two, anyone can who needs to do the same task again can quickly refer to the process and do it again. So you don't have to, reinvent the wheel again and again and again. It's easily available. And
Right.
then the fourth one, which I just highlighted, was the capability to, change, adapt to the new environment. So these
Yeah.
are very, very critical, and they need to focus on these to ensure that digital transformation is smooth and successful.
Yeah, I'm just taking on your cue as well, right? So, in fact, if you look at it from the SME side, they are sometimes I feel they are better placed as well. So when you go
Yeah.
to large organizations, even though they have access to the latest technologies and all of that, see there is a hierarchical structure. There's a group of management people. You basically need to convince quite a lot of people, right? But that's the advantage I feel when it comes to SMEs. SMEs, most of them are owner driven or founder driven, right? So it's sometimes, if the owner or the founder is himself convinced that change has to come in, it's easy to drill it down the organization, right? So that's where I feel the SMEs are more well placed on one side. I actually feel, even though they obviously the challenge for funds and all of that is there, but at least from a change perspective, it's easy for them to drill it down to their organization. That's what I feel.
So, John, you're absolutely right. The decision making is much easier and faster in
Right.
SME because
Right.
the hierarchy is not there,
Right.
and it's more or less, one man, one woman show, whatever.
That's
They
true.
need to. What I talked about were the challenges that they face. And
Right.
you're right. The positive is now in a large organization, you want to do something, there will be 10 layers of approval,
That's true.
and someone is sleeping, your approval never comes. or there would be 10 different ideas the moment you throw an idea. So there are definitely pros and cons on both sides.
Definitely. Right.
And I always, it means what you said is very valid. Large organization, it's like trying to move a large rock, and then a small organization, a small stone. So so the changing of position of a small stone is always easier than the large rock. But on the other side, the funds and their preparedness in the large one is always, an advantage. So both have a positive and negative, advantage and disadvantage.
So, but how do you think, Sudhir, that the SMEs, we have talked about the challenges as well, right? So, but how do you think they need to prepare themselves for this transformation? Obviously, the next decade, it's going to be about digital transformations. How do you think they have to prepare themselves?
No, yeah, like I mentioned, you mentioned, and I think this is no uh, knowledge that we are trying to share that digital is future.
Yeah.
So I always make a statement that, digital is future. The sooner you adopt and adapt, the better it is for your business. Yeah. So any business which so far seemed cannot be done digitally online, it has to be face to face, or but yes, you will having, have most of them have moved into the digital world today. Even, buying a car today, they're giving you a full 3D kind of an experience online,
Right.
so you really don't have to go. Now, being digital or moving into the digital world, why it is critical, it gives you various advantages. One, okay, the initial investment is there, of course, but
Yeah.
that investment gives you huge return. Your access, your reach, is much larger, or it is kind of infinite. Once you're on the digital world, someone from anywhere in the world on the globe can access you. Whereas when you're in the traditional method, even accessing the next door, office or a possible client might become difficult. Yeah.
Right.
So that's a huge thing, and that gives you such a huge opportunity. So, and if you are not boarding that bus of digital, you will definitely lag behind, because the others will take the digital board, their reach, their access, their communication, everything will be just a press of a button. So
Right.
digital in that frame of mind or approach for business becomes quite imperative, whether you're large, small, medium, just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So people have to move into the digital world.
So
And
if
yeah.
if I just take a little bit of crux there, Sudhir. So it's about looking at the environment. How your industry is changing, how your business model is changing. So that's how you need to the SMEs need to keep watching out for that, and make those small changes which are there on the digital side. Is that how you would propose for the SMEs too?
Yes, of course, John, because there are certain things which you cannot just make digital. If you have a factory running and producing, so the
Yeah.
entire production cannot become digital, but you can definitely bring in a digital flavor to improve your, productivity. Something which was earlier done totally manually, if you automate it, if you bring digital controls, so people, and even safety and, security, plays in factory environment, that many
Right.
places you were going and doing certain things which had some risk element attached to it. But now when you digitize the entire control and process, maybe sitting in a safer room, you are controlling the entire, activity, from a remote, and completely taking care of the risk element. So
Right.
there are definite advantage. And what you mentioned, yes, there would be certain things which you cannot totally move into digital, but there
Yeah.
is a whole lot of other activities and processes which, if you don't move into digital, you will lose out. So
Yeah.
people have to start thinking out of the box, that how do I now digitize it? You
Right.
know, I'm not an expert in every industry, but the person who is an expert, who knows I do one, two, three, four things. Now, They just need to collaborate with someone from the digital side to say, I need to do step A, step B, step C, and step D. How now help me do it in a digital way.
Right. Right. Okay.
In short, I'm saying they have to move.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Sudhir. There. Sudhir, just moving away from the industry side. You've been with large corporates, obviously. So, what motivated you to become an independent consultant?
An individual, or why I moved in to an individual role of this particular role was something I always wanted to do. I thought people who have means having done 2-3 decades of corporate experience, having learned so much, it was time to give back to the society and organizations.
Right.
And I personally think that anybody who's got 20 years plus of experience should start doing this, if not full time, at least part time, because
Right.
that allows you to develop and utilize your knowledge, and it also helps organizations which cannot afford this kind of a resource. You know, they can then get into a gig kind
Correct.
of an understanding. Like I'm saying, like someone cannot afford you full time, but that person doesn't need you full time, but needs your, expertise and experience and knowledge. So the understanding is that okay, if you come once a week, it's good enough.
Yeah.
So you charge them maybe 30% of what you would have charged. So for
Right.
them, getting your knowledge and experience at that level, and you also, as an individual, you get to do 5 days a week, 30%, which is 150 of what you would have normally charged. So it becomes
Yeah.
a win-win. So the person utilizing you gets your expertise and at a cost and a price that they can afford. You get multiple opportunities, you reduce your risk, and also increase your earning. So for me to move into this was actually 4 or 5 years back. I had a near-death experience, and that pushed me into this. And I said,
Okay.
look, future, I don't know. What I thought of doing 5 years later, let me do it now. And that's how I got in. And one thing, you asked me about individual consultant. I don't call myself a consultant because I was very clear. I don't want to be just a consultant. I
Right.
want to be a person who is also part of the execution. Because
Right.
most of the time, 99% of the time, a strategy fails because of execution.
Right.
People have brilliant strategies, you know, and it's very easy for me to say, hey, John, do this A, B, C, D. And 3 months later, when I asked John what happened, he said, John failed. So I said, oh, John, my strategy was brilliant. You failed in
Yeah.
execution.
That's true.
And that is a typical thing with due respect, most of the consultants work. You know,
Right.
they tell you what to do and then they go off. If
Right.
you if you succeed, then their strategy was great. If you fail, then your execution was poor. So I was very clear I want to do both.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I think the points which you made, in terms of, you obviously you've gained, a large experience over so many years of working with so many multinationals. So you want to really impart your knowledge to the society as well. You've gained those experiences, and obviously there are so many SMEs who need this kind of expertise, but it's not really possible for them to hire such kind of an experienced consultant or a management person to run their show, because it's going to be really costly for them in the longer run. So it's just need, what they need is that knowledge part, somebody who can come in, who can be on a part-time basis, give them the strategy, as well as you rightly pointed out, be part of that execution, right? You just see that wherever they need at that point of execution, wherever they have some small challenges, you come in, fix up the challenge, help them out, correct them, and just move out. I think that makes sense for them as well, right? So that's one of the advantages SMEs have today. They can there's an open world of experts who are out there, who can come in just on a temporary basis, just clear their needs, and they can just move on. Yeah. I think it's a valid point. Uh, just going on, so there, what do you think is the future of independent consulting as well, and your advice for people who are pursuing this?
So if you know, and I'm sure people around are there, we have been talking about the gig economy.
Right,
And the gig economy is not only for the senior or the consulting roles; it is across.
right,
And and if you try to see yourself as an independent consultant from the eyes of the gig economy, I think that's where the future lies. And as
right,
I mentioned, that for an individual, let's say I want to earn 100 every month,
right,
and I go out in the market, and 100 is one of the expensive, rates. So I don't find any buyer for me at all. And as a consultant, I'm sitting and, you know, just dwindling my thumb because nobody wants to hire me at 100. And that 100 is my last salary drawn, or maybe 20% higher than that. No
right,
one wants to do that. So one of the critical things for all individual consultants is that make your ticket size small
right,
and go to multiple people. By
right,
this, what you do is, as I mentioned, that you charge 30% per day of your original fee in a week. So I say that I will come to you once a week,
yeah,
and instead of 100 rupees, I charge you 30 rupees.
right,
And I have 5 days. So I charge 30 rupees 5 days. I actually tend to earn 150 rupees, which is
absolutely,
more than what I wanted to earn.
right,
And at the same time, I'm also mitigating my risk. First, I make myself affordable to all these people, you know,
right,
and that segment is much larger than the segment which can afford to pay me, if not 100, at least 90. That segment is very small. Whereas a 30 rupee paying segment is huge.
yeah,
So you get that opportunity, you make yourself affordable, so they come and hire you. You work in 5 different clients, so you mitigate your own risk. So even if one client goes off or two goes off, you're still not dead. You
right,
still have some, revenue coming. And of course, the biggest thing is that you are also, when you get fully occupied, you earn 30 to 50% more than what anyone would have been willing to pay at the highest level.
right,
So overall, make your ticket small, target the mid segment. SME is possibly the best segment. And
right,
also on the city level, target tier two.
right,
Tier two cities have huge potential. They have the money, they don't have the access. So
absolutely,
provide the access. So they don't mind paying you 30. Instead of 30, they are willing to pay you even 40, you
yeah,
know, but they don't have that.
right,
And people, like me, don't want to go to tier two city, you know, and say, no, 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 I will stay in the metros only. And now with this digital online world, that wall or barrier has gone totally. Means
right,
I think all of us, like right now, you're in Hyderabad, I'm in Gurgaon, and we are doing conference calls across the globe. In the morning, I was, connected to Canada. In the evening, I have a US call.
right,
Daytime, I'm doing domestic calls. So barrier distance have gone.
right,
It suddenly reminds me of our Reliance's first dialogue when we launched the services mobile, death
yeah,
of distance, because there was no STD charges. You could
right,
call one with the same charge. So this online has also brought in the death of distance. And tier two is an area to focus for all consultants who are the budding consultants just coming in. Focus on tier two, and it is much more rewarding and refreshing working there. That's my
right.
personal experience.
Right, right. I think some serious valuable inputs for all consultants who are pursuing independent on their own as well. So some really valuable inputs there, Mr. Sudhir. Sudhir, finally, just one last question I have. So in terms of what value proposition you believe you can give to your target customers?
You know, okay, when you say value proposition, I don't know whether I understand it correctly.
Right.
But what my connection with my customers is completely based on trust and ownership. That I trust you, you trust me, and I own the responsibility that you give me. And that helps me build relationship. And today's world, or why today, forever, whether it's at home, at work, or as an employee or a consultant, everything is based on relationship.
Right.
And today, everyone is worried about being cheated, because you come and say, "Hey, Sudhir, will you do it?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. I can do this, this, this." And when I take advance payment from you and then disappear, you know. And in COVID world, it is much easier to disappear. You simply say, "I have COVID," and no one wants to talk to you also. So building trust, I think is the strongest trait or necessity in today's world,
Right.
and followed by ownership. And ownership when things go wrong, you know. So ownership, everyone displays ownership when there is success. The
Right.
true ownership is displayed when there is failure.
Right.
So you must have the courage to own up the failures,
Right.
and that also further enhances your trust that this guy will not run away if there is a failure. Will own up. So your relationship becomes better, and consultancy especially is rapport and relationship.
Right.
So this is my, I would say, my personal mantra is trust and ownership.
Right. Wonderful, wonderful, Sudhir. So thank you so much, Mr. Sudhir, for sharing about yourself, your thoughts in terms of how SMEs should basically prepare themselves, as well. How does the future of independent consulting is, and how the consultants can look forward to the going ahead outside in the market as well, and also finally sharing your value proposition in terms of the trust element that you would like to drive down to your customers. So thank you so much, Mr. Sudhir, for this wonderful session. Thank you, everybody. It was nice having you as well. So we'll see you on the other side with another expert in the next week. Thank you so much, all.